Hey everybody. So I'm going to talk today about understanding that I was a drug addict, and both with my alcoholism and my drug addiction, which my drug of choice was pills. If I was walking past you in the grocery store, you would have no idea. My hair was done, my makeup was done, I looked put together. I did not represent what some people think about when there is alcoholism and drug addiction active. And from a drug addict perspective, when I was in inpatient treatment at that time, I wasn't abusing drugs. I had taken drugs for surgeries that I've had previously, but it wasn't something where I was taking regularly. I didn't have this compulsion and obsession to begin drugging myself. When it comes to my drug addiction, kind of skipping ahead of my timeline, I was sober for 2 years from alcohol, and I felt really good. I processed the trauma inside the inpatient where I could talk about it finally and not have to drink and kind of get into a rage or begin sobbing. And I'm so grateful for that experience because I was able to move forward with my life where previously I was stuck. So I had 2 years of feeling wonderful, and I did what's called 90 and 90, and genuinely thought that self-knowledge would keep me sober and I wouldn't drink again. But after about 2 years, life got really hard. I ended up getting knocked up and having a little girl. The dad didn't want to be involved, and in fact, he was doing quite well for himself, and he asked for a parental right termination, which I granted when my daughter was 10 weeks old to protect her from him, and I'll tell that story. But when she was about 18 months and I had no money, I wasn't planning on having a baby, so there were times where it was just in a position where I was, literally I had nothing left at the end of the month, and I was spending money only on necessities, and I was even having to borrow money from my parents for things like formula and diapers. And when she was about 18 months, I was so stressed out and anxious, and I remember having this experience of like walking into the bathroom at work, and it struck me that I hadn't felt happy or genuinely laughed or smiled in 2 years. And when she was about 18 months, knowing I'm an alcoholic, I decided to begin taking pills. And at the very onset, I wasn't taking them on a daily basis. I always got a hold of them legally, but at the very end, I was doctor shopping, feigning migraines, going to urgent cares like I had some kind of bronchitis and getting Tussinex, which has hydrocodone in it. And it got really bad within about 2 years, where I remember this moment driving home at one point and looking down at my hands and wanting to come out of my skin because I was so stressed out, anxious, and worried. And when it comes to the amount I was taking at the very end, it was approximately 5,000 milligrams, where I would take an entire bottle of that medication that I had been able to work from a clinician to get to. And my mother was a bedside nurse for 40 years, and she was horrified. But that would only last me for an hour. On October 11th, 2012, is when I picked up liquor again because I couldn't get a hold of narcotics. In fact, I called in a prescription, and they saw my history and denied me the prescription refill. And I made a decision at 2 o'clock in that afternoon that I was going to drink again. Now, granted, I had blocked out for the first 5 years of my sobriety that I began binging on Robitussin that summer, where I would guzzle Robitussin. If you opened one of my drawers in my room, it was filled with empty bottles. And I'm not sure why I blocked out that experience, but I definitely relapsed on alcohol in the summer. And when it comes to identifying that I was a drug addict, it was the euphoria it gave me. I finally felt like the stress and worry where my shoulders would go to the bottom of my earlobes because my muscles would knot up. It would actually settle down. I felt calm and peaceful. I no longer had a normal relationship with something that is not actively prescribed and given in very specific circumstances, like a major surgery. And at that point in time, I knew I was also a drug addict. I had just switched modalities from alcohol to drugs, but ultimately ended up going back to alcohol because it was easier to get to. And that is encompassing my identification of knowing that I was also a drug addict at that time. But again, I've been in sobriety for 13 years, and I promise you that if I can do this, you can too.